So our next conference keynote is Carol Chen, Community Development Manager at Red Hat. Today she'll be talking openness in the culturally diverse world and community. So please welcome her with a round of applause, Carol Chen.
Thank you, Isa. Can you all hear me? Good? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Chen, and I work for Red Hat, as you can see. I forgot to wear my red fedora today, so kind of kicking myself for that. So my day job is Community Development Manager. What it means is I work with open source communities, and the project I'm responsible for is called ManageIQ. It's the upstream project that the Red Hat product CloudForms is based upon. It's a cloud management platform, and it's, well, I can, I have another set of slides to talk about that for 30 minutes, but maybe I'll save that for Mindtrek 2018. So today's topic is a bit more broad in a sense. I'm going to talk about openness in our culturally diverse world. Red Hat is an open source company. It's, we have global employees, 10,000 or so of us around the world, and definitely very diverse. So, but beyond that, I myself have, lived and traveled in many parts of the world. So I hope that with that, I can bring a bit of interesting insights to when we talk about openness in our world. All right. Okay, so before I start, I'd just like to say that, Mindtrek is a really great event. I think this is my third or fourth Mindtrek. And I was searching through my archives for photos from past events, and I think that's from 2011, 2013. And one good thing about doing your slides last minute, you get to put really updated content. I had one from yesterday when they were giving out, right on this stage, the Open World Hero Award to, I think, Naomi Woo. So that's from yesterday, and with that, I want to thank the organizers, the sponsors, and most of all, the volunteers, like Andy, Aki, Heikki. I just met them because I myself organize events, and I know that volunteers are very invaluable to the success of an event. So I just want to put out the thanks right now before I forget, because usually towards the end, I might either run out of time or run out of memory. So, all right, and of course, thanks to all of you for being here and listening to this. So thank you. So a little bit about me. I moved to Finland on the 22nd of September 2007. So if you do the math, it's exactly 9 years, 364 days ago. So tomorrow will be my 10-year anniversary in Finland. So before this, I've lived also in Taiwan, Singapore, and the United States, in Texas specifically. And even though it seems like I've been here for a long, long time, I've actually lived longer in Singapore and Texas, if you can believe it. So again, a bit of math, you can figure out that, there's many years involved, and I'm not that young, and I keep talking about math, but what they say about Chinese people being good at math, it's not a stereotype, it's a fact. Just kidding. Actually, this kind of leads into the kind of topic today, because I will be making some generalizations, some observations, personal observations, and by no means am I saying, all Asians are like that, or all Finns are a certain way. So, but, sometimes there are reasons, or there might be influences that cause somebody to think a certain way or behave a certain way. So we want to explore some of this. Then in terms of my kind of job or career history, I've worked for Nokia, which kind of explains why I'm here in Finland, Yola, and now Red Hat. So with Nokia, I was exposed to open source development already with a project called Helix. It was a multimedia engine, and it powered a lot of the multimedia stuff in the Symbian phones. But of course, actually my first kind of foray into Linux and open source was using, running Linux on my computer, on my laptop, some 20 odd years ago. And it was, my first distro was actually Red Hat. So maybe that got me the job there, I don't know. But so that's a bit about my history, and my speaker notes are gone for some reason, but you know. So when we talk about openness, what do we mean by that? And what do you think it means, or the definition it is? So, well, you can take a dictionary, you can go online and search. So what I found is from Wiktionary, a few of the definitions. The first one is about being open to receiving ideas and experiences and people and stuff like that that's different from you. So, you know, being open to the reception of such stuff. Then the next one is more about being transparent, keeping no secrets. And sometimes you can be kind of open and sharing everything, but not open to receiving ideas. So is that really openness? And also conversely, you know, you might be like, you know, getting everybody's feedback and ideas and, you know, appreciating that, but kind of hiding everything and keeping everything to yourself. Again, is that truly open? The third definition kind of ties more into, like, I guess, open source, because it talks about accessibility to computer code and things like that. So, different definitions. And in Wiktionary, which is, by the way, open to editing, so you can actually go and change the definition of openness. Personally, I think openness is both the sharing and the receiving of what other people want to share. So, but maybe different cultures might see it differently. Let's explore that. So, just this past week, I was talking with one of my colleagues, Victor. We were talking about designing some T-shirts for promoting DevOps, you know, DevOps management, cloud stuff. And yesterday when I was listening to a talk by, I think, Timo Oxalf-Dieto, he was talking about when you put dev with cloud together, sometimes you get a mess. But when you introduce ops, so DevOps plus cloud is a perfect match. Of course, there's a whole reasoning behind it, and you know, I hope you either you attended a talk or maybe there's a recording of that. You can take a look. But so you know, there's a lot of talk about ops nowadays. So some of the kind of brainstorm ideas we came up with my colleague about slogans for T-shirts. You know, all you need is ops. Ops is coming, and things like that. We had like a whole bunch. Most of the ideas are Victor's, by the way. I don't want to claim that I came up with these. But then we talked to our brand team in Red Hat, and it turns out that more than half of our ideas were kind of rejected or scraped or denied. Well, partly because, of course, we have a brand messaging and guideline, so you know, some things didn't really fit there. But a big part is also because a lot of these slogans are what they call litigious, so they're prone to or have the risk of somebody suing you for infringing something or other trademark and copyright. So, you know, like, it kind of felt like a blow, like, you know, we have all these cool ideas and most of them were shot down. But of course, I mean, I understand that there's a need to do that, but like, just because somebody or some company put these certain words together in a certain way before the rest of us did, or, you know, then the rest of us can't use it. Or maybe it's okay to say it, but, you know, you put it on a t-shirt and it's not okay. So think about that, like, is that a really necessary thing, or, you know, what should be the limit? And in my previous job, well, actually two jobs ago in Nokia, I was a software engineer. And whenever I had code written, they will have an IPR engineer go through it. So what they do is actually a couple of things. One is to check that you're not infringing on some patent or something that is, you know, risky or liable for problems. So, and another one is actually also seeing if there's something that's patentable, that it's interesting, new, and stuff like that. So I remember when I first heard about that, I was really panicking, like, what? Would they find out that I kind of lifted a couple of subroutines from Stack Overflow or something? Of course, it's not that kind of things they're looking for, but it's just, there's this sense of like worrying about everything I do, and if I'm, you know, threading the right line, and what if I, you know, accidentally do something I'm not supposed to. So there's this constant worry, constant fear, I guess. But let's just say maybe that's part of the reason I stopped programming. No, really not. I just prefer to do more kind of communication and marketing thing. So, but it's something that's, you know, constantly was constantly on my mind. But of course, there's, besides software, there's also like hardware, and these kind of things are more like blatant copying, and I think most of us would say this is like, you know, wrong, or this is, you know, you're not supposed to do that. KIRF, keep it real fake. But I picked these two. There are a lot of different examples in the link, but I picked these two because I actually worked on these phones. It's just interesting to see that what they copied was the appearance and, you know, the stuff that a lot of us engineers work on. Of course, we do have hardware engineers and designers and everything, but the bulk of it is actually the software, the OS. And of course, they're running some kind of different OS. So, you know, they don't have the cool stuff that we worked on for playing like great video with the engine with my code running in it, and you know, I remember N95 had a really good camera for its time. So yeah, definitely we don't want some things like that to happen, where you just copy and you know, take advantage of that. So, but I guess this is quite common, and you know, there are whole websites and discussions, forums dedicated to things like that. So now, let me pause for a bit and allow me to go back in time to let you know a bit about the mind of a teenager in Singapore. That's me, by the way. And I think I was a good student for the most part. But you know what I did? I actually sometimes copied assignments from my classmates. I'm not proud to admit that, but it happens. And the other thing is, I also willingly let some of my classmates copy my assignments. And you know why is that? At least when I was growing up and being schooled in Singapore, a major part of the overall grade for the semester is based on the individual, these kind of homework assignments. It can be more than 50%. So, you know, if you don't do them, or if you're late, you get penalized really, really badly. So, you know, even if you do really well in the exams, but if you kind of messed up your assignments, you cannot get a good grade. So in a way, we saw it as actually helping each other out. We were sharing. We didn't think of copying as a bad thing. Well, I think some people did, but for majority of us didn't. We were helping each other. And of course, we know that if you copy and you don't know the material, you're still gonna do badly on your tests. So in the end, it's still up to you to study the material and make sure you know it for the exams and do well then. But the thing is, if you already really know the material, you don't need to spend a couple of hours trying to slodge through the whole through the assignment. You can just take turns to do it and copy off each other because you already know it. Is that a good thing? I don't know, but growing up, I thought that was something we shared with my close classmates and people I actually looked up to. It's funny because the people we copy from are usually the people we look up to. So that's kind of the mentality. So and another thing is we were kind of brought up not to question authority too much. So even if a teacher said something wrong or made a mistake, unless we are 110% sure, or else we won't say, if we're just 99% sure, we won't hey, you made a mistake there, kind of thing. So with this kind of non-questioning and accepting copying, imagine this little girl, well, not so little, actually I was about this height when I was 12. I just stopped growing vertically and just started growing horizontally. So imagine a younger, thinner version of this person kind of going through life in her late teens and early 20s thinking, hey, copying is sharing, what's wrong with that? All right, this not so little girl anymore was in Wolfsburg, Germany last month. And I saw this sculpture thing in the middle of just a very nondescript neighborhood. So, well, I immediately knew that because we have this Sibelius monument in Helsinki, that my first thought was, oh, somebody got inspired by the Sibelius monument and then did a bit of modification and, made a copy of it and for sharing this beautiful design in Germany. But then, because I also have experience living in the US for a while, my next thought was, oh no, somebody probably got sued for this. Or some kind of case was against the person. Then I thought, it could be possible that the original sculptor did a variation of her work and put it in Germany, although it was just a really, it wasn't like a touristy town or anything. So I was kind of just wondering, what is the possibility that you have that similar sculpture in Germany? And then I tweeted about it, as we all do nowadays. And somebody wrote back and said, there's a similarly inspired design in a town in Canada. So are these all related? I went to Google and tried to search for information. Most monuments or tourist attractions, they usually have some kind of web page or it's on the city's website or some wiki travel or some tour guides or anything. But I couldn't find anything in English. Maybe my Google skills are fading out, no, but what I did find is 3 different sources in different languages, And the Finnish one is from Helsingin Sanomat, a local newspaper, in Helsinki. And based on that article, they said, yes, that statue or that monument is plagiarized, and the original sculptor, Eila Hiltunen, is actually demanding it to be removed and for compensation and so on. The German source, thanks to Google Translate, the first one, by the way, is thanks to one of my Twitter followers for translating. And the second one said, no, it's not plagiarism. And then he said something about the artist passing away 10 years ago. By the way, Ayla herself passed away in 2003, so they're both not here anymore. And then there's a Swedish source, although it's obo.fi, so it's, I guess, based in Turku, Finland. It's more of a matter-of-fact headline. You know, there is a copy of the Sibelius monument in Germany. So what do we make out of these? Well, the kind of problem is all of these articles are behind paywall. So I only saw like either only the headline or the first part of the first paragraph. So there wasn't enough information for me to really find out what happened. Did they actually have a settlement or whatever? So that really got me thinking, like, it's such a cool design and very visually, how to say, like on first impression, you know that it's the Sibelius monument based in Finland. And, you know, like I said, my first thought was somebody thought it was nice and just copied it and decided to share it in different parts of the world. So, you know, if Creative Commons is more widespread, of course, there's different licensing. You can, you know, restrict how things are shared, share alike, non-derivatives and things like that. But at the very least, you have the attribution. Whereas in this case, you know, I walked up to the sculpture and I couldn't find anything. No information sign, no nothing, whether about the German sculpture or about the Finnish original sculpture that it was inspired by. So, you know, why not make it more common to share good designs like that, but with proper attribution and credits? So just something I was thinking through my holiday travels last month. And a bit more, even more recent news, and maybe also closer to home. I guess many of you should have heard about the iPhone X or iPhone 10, whatever they're calling it now. They didn't skip 4, but they skipped 9 instead. I don't know why, but so yeah, they have this, you know, doing away with the home button and using gestures. Sounds familiar? Which phones doesn't have the home button? Nokia N9, Yola phone. Which OS use gestures? Migo Harmattan, Selfish OS, and I think possibly Web OS. I was reading somewhere that Web OS had that too, even before Migo and Selfish. So, you know, it's copying ideas and things and then innovating on top of that. It's not a... It's quite a common thing, and you see it actually everywhere, big companies, small companies. So is this being what open is about? Should there be an easier way to kind of collaborate, work on something together, make it better together? That's something the East is actually I think pretty good at. You know, we tend to think, even I myself, when I've moved out of Asia for a long time, that, you know, in certain places like China, that they're not as advanced, because they're generally copying stuff, so they cannot be making innovations and things like that. But you'd be wrong. They're actually moving a lot faster in some ways. I was talking to having tea with another Chinese friend a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me, she has also lived in Finland for almost a decade, and she was telling me that every time she goes back to Shanghai, you know, every year or every couple of years, she feels like she's getting more and more behind. She feels like, you know, all the technology, especially applications in phones and a lot of the ease of use for banking, shopping, hailing their version of Uber, whatever that is a lot more convenient, more integrated to their lives than what we have actually here out in the West. So, yeah, how did they get there so quickly? Copying and innovating on top of that, perhaps coming up with their own solution, probably in some cases. So, it's again like, what do they have on their phones? They have a lot of stuff. What do we do on our phones normally? Check Facebook, Twitter. It's blocked over there in China, but they don't need it. They have a lot more. They have a lot of their own content, much more interesting and informative and integrated to everything they're doing. Of course, that's kind of like the rosy way of looking at that. I'm following this Naomi Woo from China. She's a pretty amazingly creative maker in China, and she's Chinese, of course, and based in Shenzhen, I think. And she recently had an incident with one of the manufacturers. She shared some idea with them to help produce that, to implement it, to manufacture it. And then she told them it's confidential, at least for the time being. Maybe later on she'll share the idea to the public, but at least while they are making it, it's confidential. But then what happened is they broke the confidentiality agreement, and not only did they share the idea out to the public, they actually claimed it to be theirs. So she had a whole explanation and rant. It's quite an interesting read. I have the Twitter link as well as the paste bin. You can go into that. But one thing that kind of jumped out at me is even her, she herself as a Chinese, say that in general, Chinese people don't value original ideas. I mean, I'm sure not all Chinese think that way. I don't think that way, and I know a lot of my friends don't. But there is such a trend, and there are groups of people who are like that. So it just kind of, you just have to keep that in mind when you are working with certain companies or certain people in that region. And it's really sad because a lot of times there are a lot of good, honest people as well, and these kind of people kind of make it bad for the rest of us that wants to do the right thing, wants to do things properly, wants to make sure that things are confidential when needed, and only shared in public when it's the right time and things like that. So just showing you like there are definitely this kind of cultural thing that original ideas may not be the most interesting or important, and copying is sometimes viewed as appreciating somebody else's work and just copying and then innovating on top of that is not like a huge deal. So, but enough about the East and West. I like to talk about this. This is one really, really cool thing I learned living in Finland. So I guess for most of you native Finns, or at least for those of you who have been here long enough, you know what talboat is. It's the coming together of friends or neighbors or people in the community to work on something together for the common good, for like a common goal or task. And in my impression, it's a bit more than just volunteering. I mean, volunteering is great, but it's like really sometimes not thinking so much about what I'm getting out of all these, but really what is good for the kind of overall, whether it's community or society or company or something like that, neighborhood. So that's something quite inherent in a lot of things that I see in day-to-day life in Finland. And so I thought, is this something kind of unique to the Finnish society? Then, a few years ago, I started going to this wonderful open source event, Faust, in Belgium, Brussels. And it's an event totally run and organized by volunteers. There's no like big organization paying money for professional organizers or anything like that. And I mean, like, I was just very impressed. There are thousands of participants, and things run really smoothly. And one of the years, I actually also signed up to be a volunteer. And what happens is I reached there on the day itself and said, hey, what can I do to help? And they say, oh, you signed up for this. Okay, here's your volunteer t-shirt. Here's your schedule. Go. I mean, there's this trust that you offered your help. They accept it. They trust that you know what you're doing. And they also trust that if you do have questions, you will ask. They won't like try to tell you every step what to do, you know, what you need to do, what you can't do, and things like that. So there's this very interesting dynamic that, at least growing up in Asia, I didn't have that. Like a lot of times, you know, when I'm assigned to do something or trusted to do something, or trusted, but because I end up getting a whole bunch of instructions and so on and so forth, which, of course, is helpful, but a lot of times, maybe I don't need all that information. If I do need something, I can always ask. So I think this is also a kind of good example of just people coming together. They want to make this event a success, and they're doing everything possible. And then like the trust thing I said about that. So it's like really a two-way thing. Like they accept your help, and then they also give you the trust for you to be able to do your job. So yeah, I should volunteer more when I get a chance. I'll probably go in next year as well. So it's a really good event. Then I had a chance to go to Faust Asia in Singapore this year. And, you know, like I said, I have all these stories about growing up in Asia and not thinking that something like FOSDEM is a model that could work in Asia, at least not right away. But I'm glad I was proven wrong. It was a really, again, well-organized event. I don't know how many percentage of volunteers is 100%, but there's a lot of volunteers. There's a lot of just kind of coming together and trusting each other to you know, be able to do the right thing and make the right decisions, and being open about everything. And discussions on forums, GitHub, everything was in the open. So pretty impressive. Like, you know, it's definitely not something that you won't find in Asia, and I hope to see this grow all over the world. I don't know if you can find me, but even among Asians, I'm really short. So, yeah. So a lot of pleasant surprises. You know, I have been away from Asia for a while, so I'm kind of relearning stuff whenever I go back, and realizing that, you know, even if they viewed openness a little bit differently, but it is still something that it's kind of people aspire to and want to make happen, want to see happen. So that's really encouraging. Well, all this talk about openness, one key component is communication. I mean, is somebody who communicates more, talk more, necessarily more open? What are the different styles of communications? What can we watch out for? So the kind of going back a bit to talking about when I was in school, how part of our grade is based upon all the homework assignments that we had to copy each other's to finish. When I first moved to the US to study, one of the first things that kind of maybe it's a culture shock or whatever you call that, is like everybody was talking in class, like constantly, whether or not the teacher is, you know, calling on that person, or, you know, it's like, and then I found out one of the reasons is in many of the classes, participation takes up a big portion of the overall grade, 20%, 25%, 30%. Still, a sizable, significant portion. So I can't be just kind of, sitting in a corner. Even if I understood everything and knew all the stuff, it's not enough. I won't get a good grade if I didn't participate in class. So I kind of sense that also in, I was staying with my uncle in Dallas, and in my cousins, that they are more outspoken. Whether it's even sometimes talking back to their parents, which is like, oh no, when I was growing up, it's like, oh, I never talk back to my parents. Things have changed now, but anyway. so it's just like quite a contrast how kids are brought up in some cultures to be, to voice their opinions more. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, they just want to hear your opinion, which, I don't know if necessarily always a good thing, but, people are encouraged to speak up. And in Asia, well, like I said, sometimes we're not usually questioning authority so much, and then if we want to answer a question, we'll be like, I'll be like reminding there, like waving until the teacher calls me, because I dare not interrupt her while she or him when they're speaking to teaching the class. So, and then I heard from my Finnish friends that in their kind of education, they are kind of more like, if they don't know the answer, or if they are not sure of the right answer, then they won't speak up. And then, so it's like they will only speak up when they are pretty sure, almost 100% sure that that's the right answer. So kind of keeping all these different styles in mind, I noticed that trend too when I go for meetups. So this one is one of a Yola meetup, actually a cute meetup in the Bay Area. I went with Stefano Mosconi, one of the, also a previous colleague in Yola. And so, it's in the US, there were definitely a lot more conversation. And then when I have hold a meetup here in Finland, we do get a lot of people interested, but the kind of conversations and questions are more, people will wait until they have you on the side one-to-one, then they'll ask you a question. Or the discussions are in smaller groups and not people just kind of shouting across each other. So being aware of these differences also helps me when I, engage communities to realize that some people, they are not quiet or keeping quiet because they don't have an idea or opinion, but it's just that they're kind of more culturally inclined not to speak up right then and there, and maybe later on I'll remind myself and go talk to this person because he seems interested, but he didn't speak up just now. So maybe I could, get something out of him without the whole crowd looking on. So kind of understanding these differences really helped. It's not that keeping quiet means the person is not open. It's just that, maybe he's just finding the right channel or the right time to be open. I think another reason why people may not be speaking up because English is not necessarily always the first language for a lot of people. But the thing is, it's the lingua franca for a lot of these global communications, whether it's in IT or business or anything. So, I dream of an ideal world where we have something like music. I always call music the universal language because when I first joined the Tampere Academic Symphony Orchestra, I didn't know any Finnish. Or maybe just like a couple of words. But I'm able to come together with a whole orchestra and we can create and tell a beautiful story through music together without a common language. That's because all of us understand the notations on the sheet music. That's the common language. So is there something for person-to-person communication that is as powerful as music. And there's this side joke that, well, even if in sheet notation, with the changing of social media and everything, now you have concerto in F hashtag. But I know what that means. I know it's F sharp. But yeah, so I think one thing coming back to using English is it's just for us to be aware that if you're a native English speaker, that the other person who is struggling to express an idea, that person can probably do a really good job in his or her native tongue, but so be more patient and let the person's message come through. And then for non-native English speakers, don't be afraid to try, because the most spoken language in the world is broken English, so we all understand each other, more or less. So, wrapping things up, I think the key thing is to really be aware, understand, different people, because of the different backgrounds, experiences, cultures, upbringing, can have different outlook on life, different definition of sharing and openness and things like that. And because once you're aware of the difference, then you can start to bridge the gap. And with that, I want to again remind, it's my point of view, but I think openness is a two-way street. You share something, you open up yourself, but you also should be open to receiving what the other person wants to share with you. You talk, and then you listen. So that's why I hope to hear from some of you, whether it's questions or discussions after this. I really want to practice what I preach. So, even though we might have different definitions of open, I think just trying to be open is the key thing, like to take the step, be open. And I'm not just talking about opening up source code. Open your eyes, observe, open your ears, listen to people, open your heart, be more receptive. And then I was discussing this talk with my dad, and he actually just kind of said something, so I'm going to quote him here. Openness enables connectivity for cultural diversity. So even though we are saying, hey, different cultures, it's so diverse, maybe we don't even meet on the same page for openness. But in order to bridge the gap, we have to be open. Whatever your definitions of open is, it's better to take the step and be open, and then understand the other person, and then meet in the middle, than not to be open at all. So be open, and I think my time is almost up. Oh, okay. And one more thing. I got this tweet yesterday. One of those pics or it didn't happen things. So I'm going to take a picture of me with you guys. I hope this shows up. So everybody wave. Yay. Thank you. All right. So now it did happen. So with that, I thank all of you for being here and listening to me blabber around for 45 minutes. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thanks.